How do you feel as you were talking about?
I just felt like I'm talking to a client.
The Business Lab.
Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the Business Lab podcast. Again, another exciting episode with a special guest. And before we even begin, again, we'd like to thank our venue sponsors, ID Entity and Craft by 3, and of course, our media magicians, Studio 5 Corp. Thank you so much for providing us with amazing tech and production, and of course, the editing. Amazing. Today's guest is Shehzhadee.
Yes.
Hi, Shehzhadee.
Hi, Sofian.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And Shehzhadee is the managing director of Shehzhadee Law Corporation. She focuses on commercial litigation and dispute resolution. She has achieved favorable outcomes in areas of debt recovery claims, contractual disputes, shareholder disputes, insolvency, and other commercial claims. It's very nice to have a lawyer for one of our podcast episodes. Yeah. I guess this is very interesting because the kind of viewers that we have are typically of three sorts. Number one, they want to start a business, but they don't know what they don't know. And then the second group is, I've already started a business, I'm on my way. And then the last group will probably be those who are much more advanced business owners. So that's who we're kind of talking to. And for this particular episode, being a lawyer yourself, we'd love to hear about your insights and some nuggets of wisdom that you have. Okay, so I think let's kick things off with the first very, very simple one, which is, could you share a little bit more about your background in law and how it led you to running your own firm? Like, how did that come about?
Okay, I get this question quite a lot. So I've been a practicing lawyer for 10 years now. So I started my journey as a trainee lawyer. So I trained at a small law firm practicing mainly personal injury claims, specifically what they call Langgar cases. Okay, so those were car collision cases. So after I got called to the bar, meaning I became an official lawyer, I then moved to another firm where I practiced largely commercial litigation. So commercial litigation would entail things like breach of contract, defamation, those are some of the things. And then I also practice a little bit of insolvency and bankruptcy, right? So I was at that firm for a number of years. I learned a lot. And then I moved on to become an in-house lawyer at CLAS. So that's the Criminal Legal Aid Scheme. So basically that's where I worked and I represented many criminal clients. And I was very exposed to handling cases from start to end on my own, right? And then finally, I transitioned and I went to my last firm where I eventually rose to become a partner. So at that firm, I practiced various areas of litigation. Okay. So I've practiced commercial law, Sharia law, criminal law. That's quite a wide variety. So I think this was important for me because it set the stage for me eventually setting up my own firm. So while that was key, what was the pivotal moment, I would say, and I think for many mothers out there, was really motherhood for me. So I realized that there was quite a bit of challenge trying to handle practice and a very young child who demanded my attention. You're just feeling torn in many directions. So I think unlike many of my peers in the industry who started out, they knew from the beginning that by X number of years, I'm going to set up my own firm. It wasn't like that for me. Okay. That turning point was really my daughter.
Wow. Yeah. I'm very curious to know more. And you mentioned that was the pivotal moment and the turning point, right? What did running your own law firm give you that you couldn't get, probably working in another?
Yes, so as many business owners would know, running a business is no walk in the park. Especially running a law firm, there's the lawyering side of it and then there's the business side of it. So before I even started the law firm, I was under no illusion that it was going to be easy and that it was going to give me huge pockets of time for me to spend time with my daughter. But what it gave me was the flexibility of time. So that meant that if I know that my daughter will have a certain school event, I was able to plan in advance for it. If there are certain months that I feel that I wanted to perhaps slow down a little bit, I was able to do that. I was able to take charge of how I wanted to plan the entire flow of work for the entire year. So I think that helped.
MashaAllah. I think it's nice to know that for you in particular, you're very clear on your priorities and that's what you wanted for yourself, and you make a decision essentially. And having said that, you knew that going into business was not going to be a walk in the park. I'm curious to know what were the, or rather, maybe let me phrase it this way: how did you keep on going despite knowing that there was going to be these two challenges? Like, what kept you going?
What kept me going
Yeah.
was what started me in the first place, my daughter.
Mm.
So I think any business owner, especially a first gen owner,
Yeah.
right? When you start anything from scratch, it's going to be very difficult. There are challenges, there are things that you don't know, there are things that you don't know, you know, until you find out later. But I think at the end of the day, you have to remind yourself why you are on this journey, because of course it's very easy to transition back to being a paid employee all over again, right? But what's the reason I wanted to set out on this? And also I think another consideration was in fact the fact that I enjoy litigation, right? So I do want to still be a lawyer. It's not that I wanted to quit entirely and go to a non-legal profession, which enabled me to spend time with my daughter as well. But I like litigation. And the thing is, while there's a growing number, alhamdulillah, of many of Muslim lawyers out there, I think there's still not as many Muslim lawyers who specialize in certain areas, such as criminal litigation, commercial litigation. And I thought that, you know, at the end of the day, my priorities were my daughter, my family, but at the same time, I still felt that there was a need for me to give back what I could.
That's amazing. I think knowing your North Star, what brings you forward, would help you overcome even the toughest struggles in business. Thank you for sharing that. So I wanted to zoom in on the topic that we have for today, which is essentially what business owners need to know when it comes to legal knowledge, right? From a legal perspective, what are some of the common mistakes that you've seen business owners make?
Okay, so there are a few mistakes, but I would say the overarching mistake is that business owners tend to compartmentalize knowledge of the law. They think that law is something that I look at if I get into a dispute with a supplier, if someone sues my business or someone defames my business. It's always something that you think of it as an afterthought. It's not something that they actually integrate in their day-to-day operations. And I think that's the overarching mistake. And from there are some other smaller mistakes that arise out of that. So as an example, say a common mistake I see is the lack of legal documentation.
Okay.
Right? So you would be surprised at the number of businesses which have approached me where they have disputes with their employees, right? And the disputes, I think, are not very major, but they arise because there was no proper employment contract in the first place, right? So it's only when something, things go south, then they're like, okay, what are our rights? What are the employees' rights, right? And so that's something that lack of legal documentation, I think it's really, really something that all businesses should really focus on. And this is particularly relevant for what I see to be family-owned businesses. So let me just give you an example.
Go on.
So let's say you have a business, you have a father, okay, he toiled for many years, many decades to start his business from scratch.
Okay.
Now in the course of these few decades of business, obviously he has entered into many commercial relationships with other vendors, suppliers, and all that, right? But because they are of a probably previous generation, they do it very old school style. Everything is verbal, everything is like, okay, good faith between you and me, right? Now, let's say the father ceases managing the business and in comes in your second gen millennial son, okay, trying to take over the business. So this millennial son, if he encounters some dispute with a supplier and the supplier says, what is this? Your father has always agreed to this. Your father has this. Your father has that. So, if there's nothing in writing, how do you weigh out between show me the proof and not jeopardizing the commercial relationships which your father has built over the years, right? So, moving forward, that would be very important for whoever who takes over to actually have everything formalized, everything in writing, because that would make for easy succession of the business.
But then, Shehzadee, why do you think this happens in the first place? Like, shouldn't this be common knowledge that you should have at least some form of documentation?
Even if there's some form of documentation, sometimes terms are changed, but it's not incorporated into the original agreement. Over time, there are clauses which are missing. So, yes, so that's something that's quite, I do see it quite a bit. Okay. So that's one mistake. Second common mistake I see is the failure to actually acquaint the business owners to acquaint themselves with the laws and regulations. Of course, there's the normal regulations and laws relating to MOM, by CPF, which you need to know, right? And then there's the trade-specific regulations that you need to know. Yet, they do not keep themselves aware of it, and in view of because of that, this leads to penalties, you being fined for contravention of these laws. So I have personally represented companies where they are in breach of MOM laws because of illegal employment, right? Simple things like even the owner, okay, of the business gets his helper to help out at the business, or gets somebody from overseas, but they haven't passed certain they didn't comply with certain regulations. And for our some of our smaller businesses, let's not look to the bigger ones, but even the smaller ones, say you have a home-based business, right?
Yes.
So home-based businesses, there are the regulations. There's the home-based business regulations. So say you have a tuition teacher, okay, who wants to give tuition, right, out of his HDB flat.
Yeah.
So there's a regulation which says that it cannot be more than 3 students at any one time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So these are things that, what I'm trying to say is that before you even think of scaling up from the outset, know what are the regulations which apply. And if you don't know exactly, know where to look, know who to ask.
Wow. Okay. So it reminds me of another previous episode. One of the business owners was saying to know their numbers, to know the finance. And where you come in right now, you're telling all of us, know your the legal rights of your employees. Make sure you are aware of the regulations. Okay, right? On that same thread, right? What are some of the practices and principles that business owners should prioritize when it comes to these kind of things? Is there anything in particular that they should, is there like a checklist of things that should, just at the top of their head, they should already have?
You are talking about business owners or those who want to start out their business?
Could be both.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for those who want to start out their business, first of all, you have to consider what kind of business you want to have. So is it a sole proprietorship? Okay. There are different types of businesses. You have your sole proprietorship, you have your limited liability partnership, you have your limited liability corporation. So what is it? What's the business structure?
Right.
Because it makes a difference. So let's say you want a sole proprietorship. Basically, it's not an incorporated company, right? So this business, essentially, let's say I open up a law firm, right? And this business is one and the same as me. So if anybody were to sue this sole proprietorship, they would be suing me as well, Shehzadee Abdul Rahman, not just the business. So we are considered a single entity in the eyes of the law, right? So that some people opt for sole proprietorship because it's a lot easier. You don't have to comply with a lot more regulations, accounting, and all that, which apply to like limited liability corporations. You don't have to. So it's easier to manage, but at the same time, you are one and the same. So if let's say you have, the business owes a creditor money, the creditor can come after your personal bank account, like as an individual. So, these are some of the things, the structure. So that's one. Secondly, what they should take note of is, of course, from the outset, know what are the important documents or documentation they should have in place. So if you want to have if you are incorporating your company, you have a limited liability company, you want to have things like your shareholders agreement in place. You want to have things like your company constitution in place. And then, going down, you have your contracts with your employees. And let me tell you why contracts with employees are very, very important. Okay. So there's two types of contracts. One is called a contract of service. So that's your employer-employee contract. And then you have contract for service, not of service, for service, right? And that's like basically you are engaging a freelancer, essentially, right? Now, sometimes business owners don't know the difference between the two. So let me just give you an example. Say I'm a business owner and I hire a driver, okay? In my mind, this is just a driver. He comes at a certain time every day. He's just an independent contractor. He's not my employee. I'm not obligated to pay him CPF or any of the benefits, nothing. He's just someone that I engage, right? However, notwithstanding the label that I attribute to him, if the facts turn out, that actually, for all intents and purposes, he is behaving like an employee. For example, he has to report at my office every single day at a certain time. If he has to use the company's vehicle, if he has to adhere to certain company's policy. So are you essentially freelancer, right, who gets to dictate your terms, or are you essentially an employee? And I've seen cases where the lines are blurred, and then if something happens, what if actually it turns out he's an employee and you have not been paying him CPF all this while, right? So the company can get into trouble for that. So that's why I think that employer-employee contracts are very, very important. It should be properly drafted as well.
I think the most important thing for anybody who wants to venture and go out and do their own business is to understand that there is no substitute to hard work. Hard work comes first. Everything else comes second. Because we do know that people view business owners as kurang boss. You guys are bosses. You guys drive nice cars and you guys stay in nice places. Yeah, but you don't understand the struggles to get there. I personally tell myself this: do or do not, there's no try. Courtesy of Yoda.
Wow, I love the fact that you're highlighting things that might be common knowledge, but perhaps it happens too often, and being a practicing lawyer yourself, probably you've seen what goes on. And I'm besides the fact that this is something that's very serious, I think that as business owners, I guess there's a lot on their mind. They're probably running the business, but you did mention to make the legal perspective not a compartment of the business, but integrated. I'm just kind of curious, like from that perspective, how do we do that, right? So, for example, let's say I already have my own business. Okay, how do I kind of incorporate the legal principles and things I need to be careful of in my business? Like, what would be a good way to kickstart that journey if, let's say, I've not done that yet? Yeah.
So of course, the first thing you can do is to seek legal advice. That's the first thing you can do. But even before that, I think on your own, there's an internet. You can actually research like what are the things I need to take note of. And significantly, I think this doesn't just apply to law, but across any industry. ask those who have trodden that path before you.
Mm.
And when I set up my own law firm,
Yeah.
I called so many previous lawyers, like, what do I have to do? This and that and this and that. And I asked the same question to every single person because somebody might miss something out. So that's something that I think, ask those within your industry especially. And that's a key thing, I think, for any business person, because you need to be acquainted with one another and not view each other as competition. You need to help each other, and that's when you exchange knowledge also.
Okay, interesting. You make mention of that, whereby you can share the knowledge that you already have, and I think that if there is such an ecosystem of wanting to share the benefit, I think everybody will rise up. Right? Rising tide lifts all boats, so to speak. So back to the trends. I want to focus on what are some of the trends that you see in the legal space, for example, that's something. It's like a tsunami that's probably coming to us, but we haven't even seen it yet. Because there's so much political instability. There's so much going on in the world. So from a business perspective, what are the legal considerations that we need to kind of anticipate before the wave comes and hits us? Are there any?
Okay, one that comes to mind is, now the world has changed forever since COVID, right? It's become increasingly digital. People work from home. People work from Bali, from anywhere, right? And I think something that's really, really very important is that with this advent of this digital age, businesses need to be able to be robust in safeguarding their creative works, their information, their personal information. So there's a lot of safeguards need to be in place. So, for example, if you have employees who are not working in office, you have to ensure that there's measures being put in place to ensure that there's no leaking of any confidential information. So that's something that I think is quite important, because last time it's not so bad because everybody's in office, but now everybody is all around, and you don't want it to be a case where you have somebody who is taking a personal call, business related, but I don't know, in a taxi or in a cafe or something. So there needs to be more robust measures, systems in place. And also, I think businesses need to acquaint their own staff with not breaching PDPA, confidential information. Yeah, that's what I think is something that businesses should preempt.
I see. Maybe could you flesh that out a little bit, with regards to the PDPA? What are some of the guidelines, or rather maybe your recommendations on how businesses can do that?
Okay, so like if any of your staff has to compile confidential information of clients or anything, and you have to use that confidential information for another project or another thing which it was not initially contemplated to be used for, you have to declare and you have to tell the clients. So that's some of the things that you just have to be careful to make sure there's no leaking of any information, and that if you collate any confidential information is used for a specific purpose, and if not, you have to seek consent.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Very important, right? PDPA, consent, right? So I wanted to kind of zoom out a little bit and maybe take a look at in terms of support and getting the knowledge that we need to know. Like you mentioned about you don't know what you don't know, right? What are some of the resources that we can tap into to kind of get ourselves acquainted or much more aware of the legal rights and the principles that we need to know? Because I mean, we are drowned in a lot of information. What are your recommended resources?
Okay, my recommended resources is, I won't send you down this hole of looking at very lengthy text.
Yes, thank you.
Because business owners do not have the time to do that, especially if you're not lawyers. But as a starting point, go to CPF website, go to MOM website, go to IRAS website, read up what is required. The basic regulatory bodies in Singapore first. Okay, so if you are in the food industry business, go to the page of the regulatory body in that regard. So that's a starting point. And then they will point you, there will be resources there as to like what are legislation, what's the rules you should be looking at, and then you can go from there and read out more from there.
Yeah, I think whenever we go to those websites, sometimes we get overwhelmed. They do have a Q&A, or FAQ,
FAQ.
frequently asked questions. And then when you look through, okay, so I guess there are resources, and it's good that you're pointing us to that direction. Yes, guys, the resources are out there. We just have to, like what Shehzadee mentioned, to ask, right? Get legal assistance if you need to, and go to the resources that we have. Okay, so I guess listening to what you're saying about this, so I guess, I don't know, I'm not sure how some of them are feeling. Maybe some of them might be feeling apprehensive because, like, wow, there's so many things I need to prepare for my business. I'm not sure where to start. I'm not sure what I need to do. I guess you've already kind of like teased that out.
Yeah.
At this point in time, when you first started out as a business owner,
Yeah.
let's talk about that, right?
Yeah.
So you like litigation, but you became a business owner.
Yes.
Right? Maybe tell us a little bit more about that experience and what were your key challenges that you had to go through when you first started.
Sure. So I think the biggest challenge was the transition from employee to employer. I think that's the biggest transition because mindset-wise, I had to really shift my perspective, and I had to brace myself for there were a few challenges.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't even have to be something that's very complicated. Even simple things like logistically setting up an office, right?
Yes.
The actual space. And as a law firm especially, it's very, very important for you to have proper systems in place from the get-go. Don't even think about scaling up from the day one. You already need to have, so like many law firms, we have a digital process where you have conflict checks, invoicing, all that. So you had to have your system in place, all your LawNet, all those resources. So that's something that I won't say that it was really a challenge, but it was certainly different from when I was an employee in a place where all the systems were set up for me, right? So that's one of the, I would say, the difference. But along the way, there is something so, it's cliche, but it's something so beautiful about entering a space and like, okay, look, this is mine. And I'm putting in this photocopier, this is, and this chair, and this, So as much as it was a transition, it's a challenge in that sense. But I think that enjoy the moment as well. Don't be filled with so much apprehension when you start, because if you are going to feel that way from the beginning, it's going to get more challenging over the, as the business grows, right? So, yeah.
So, okay, I think that gives us a good glimpse of how you transition. I want to take a look into how you become a business owner and you practice litigation, right? So, for example, what are some of the things, like the principles that you hold to, right, to function as a business owner and a litigator? Is there something that stands out for you more than others? What would some of that be?
Okay, so for one, knowledge. Like I
Okay.
say, I cannot overemphasize this.
Mm.
And knowledge in the business aspect as
Okay.
well as industry specific knowledge. So I shared before with you, Sophian, that
Yeah.
in terms of industry specific knowledge, now, especially now that I'm on my own, I have a litmus test for myself. And that test is that, do I feel confident enough to represent my mother, my father, my family members? I think that's very important. That's a litmus test for myself. Like, am I confident enough? If I am, then I'm okay, in this practice area. But if I feel a bit doubtful, then what's the reason? How can I improve? So that, I've had practice and I'm quite experienced in a number of practice areas, but of course you can always learn more, right? And if there are areas where I've not really practiced and I want to learn a little bit more, so that would be my litmus test. So back to your question, Sophian, is what are some of the things that I hold close? I think acquiring knowledge, that's one very, very important. Yeah.
What would be a close second?
Close second would be branding, actually. Okay, branding. So I think every business owner starts out because he or she feels that there's something that he or she can bring to the table, right? Everyone knows there's something I just want to bring to the table and I'm willing to explore it. That's why I'm even entertaining this idea, right? But if you feel that, so then the next question is, okay, what sets you apart, right? Everybody has their unique blend of experience, strengths, weaknesses, right? Support systems as well.
Yeah.
So how do you tap on it to differentiate yourself from others whilst emphasizing on authenticity? I think that's very important.
Wow. Okay. I like how you kind of rooted it back to authenticity. I'm curious to know, what's your approach on branding since we're on this topic?
Okay. So for me, well, my firm's name is my name. So I am the face of the firm, right? Like it or not, So initially, when it came to branding as well, I thought that I wanted to adopt the approach where if I were to make content,
Yeah.
it would be more faceless.
Okay.
Basically, like infographics and videos explaining the law, breaking it down. And I do find that quite helpful as well from those who have done that. So that was initially my thought. But then somebody suggested to me and said, your name is the firm's name. People want to know who is Shehzhadee. So why don't you give a more personalized touch and make the videos with your face in it?
Right.
So yeah, I decided, okay, I should give it a go, and I did. And I realized, and the feedback that was given is that they said, viewers who watch, they said that they find that it's more personalized. They feel they can connect with me. So I think that the emphasis on authenticity, don't pretend to be who you are not, just be yourself. That's a value that I hold very strongly, whether in branding, whether or anything else.
I resonate with that because I think because your name is a company, and when you are the face of the company now in the videos, people can associate your values and what you believe in to your company.
That's right. That's right.
I don't see Shehzadee talking in the videos, then like, okay, what is this law firm about?
Yeah.
What sets them apart?
Yes.
I think that's really amazing because there's so much competition out there. How do we differentiate ourselves from the market?
Yeah.
And I think that person who gave you that advice should, you should kind of thank them a lot. It's really good advice. But we've come to the end of the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Business Lab podcast. You can catch this podcast on YouTube, on Spotify, and all of the platforms where you get your podcasts. So we hope that you share this episode with your friends. And if there's anything that stands out for you, perhaps type in the comments and we'll have a look, right? We'd like to thank our sponsors, our media musicians, Studio 5 Corp, and of course, our venue sponsors, Crowd by 3 and ID Entity. With that, thank you so much, Shehzadee, for being such a great guest and dissecting the jungle of the legal world, for business owners like us.
Very happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye.